Welcome back to another episode of the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. He's Antonio Rossetti, I'm Justin Stewart. We're coming from you from Lawrence Hall here at Point Park University. Different from our usual location at the Center for Media Innovation, but we're trying something new here. We're actually live on WPPJ, Point Park's campus radio station. So if you're currently listening, we appreciate you listening. For our usual listeners, wait for our podcast. We're live now, so just check us out at WPPJ. Without further ado, Tony, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I'm ready to talk about some sports. It's been a pretty good week. We're coming live here at Lawrence Hall. And how are you, Justin?
I'm doing good, man. Thursday's been off to a pretty good start. It's the day before Friday, the whole weekend, getting everything under situation and in control. So, it's the weekend, man. Bring it on. Bring it on. But as far as the show, if you're listening live, you can find our show usually on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Just search the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. We're going to figure out how to get this on the podcasting platforms as well. It's going to take a little bit of tinkering on my part, though, but that's where we are right now. So, as far as topics go, anything you want to start out with?
Definitely want to talk about, we haven't talked about it enough, is college football.
College football, yes. There's a lot of intriguing storylines to go as far as college football goes. Right off the bat, the most recent thing I've seen was Tennessee. They're on that roll, man. Top 3 team in the country. Heisman Hooker is making his bid to win the Heisman. I don't want to say he came out of nowhere, though, but he had a very good year last year. People might forget, but I just think that signature game against Alabama, he was lights out. Beating the number 1 team in the country with Bryce Young. That certainly has to do something for your Heisman case, if you ask me.
Oh, for sure. Hendon Hooker was solid for Virginia Tech, too. Go through the coaching change. I know he transferred before the coaching change, took over from Milton last year. He's been good ever since. He was like the perfect piece of the puzzle for them last year. He had a good season last year, too. It just so happens this year they kind of beat Alabama 52-49, which was, a pretty big upset if you ask me. This Tennessee team, they're looking solid this year. They got a lot going on for them. Question is, though, are they good enough to compete with Georgia? Because here's the thing, if you can beat Alabama, I think they are more than capable of beating Georgia. But the question is, will they be able to catch lightning in the bottle again?
Yeah, I think the thing for Tennessee is they've beaten Bama already, so it's a matter of if I think they can beat Georgia, I certainly think that helps Hooker's chances to win a Heisman. But also, you have to consider, though, Alabama's not dead in the water. They still control their own destiny. I do expect them to run the table up until the SEC championship game. And unfortunately, I think Tennessee, if they do get past Georgia, they'll lose to Alabama this time because it's really hard to beat Alabama twice in a year. But here's the thing, though. It sets up an interesting scenario with that. So, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee in particular, maybe Ole Miss too, but they kind of have an outside shot. Depending on how bad Tennessee or Georgia loses, there's a scenario where you can see potentially 3 SEC teams in the college football playoff, which, as most of you know, how it's currently constructed, it's 4 teams. So, with that being said, though, is that really good for college football to have 3 teams representing the SEC?
Yeah, here's the thing. But I think by the end of it, yes, those are 3 of the top teams. But by the end, there's only going to be 2 maximum that make the playoff, just because Ohio State's going to get in, and if Clemson keeps it up, they're going to get in as well. And so I know they just had a squeaker against Syracuse, but they got through that game. They got through the game against Wake Forest. I think it's going to be easy going from there. I think the top 3 teams coming out of the SEC, that definitely isn't a great look for, college football as a whole to have just 3 teams in the SEC, being at the top of the thing. But I do think that, like I said, Clemson, Ohio State, I think those 2 teams are going to keep going. By the end of it, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, they're going to have to lose at some point, or one of the teams is going to remain undefeated. So, there's no way they're going to take 3 SEC teams out of it. But I mean, it would be wild if they did.
No, I do still believe that they're going to take 2. That's kind of been how it's been the past few years with Georgia and Alabama. So I still think Alabama's a playoff team. It's just a matter of it's going to come down to between Georgia and Tennessee. And I think Georgia is still the best team in the country right now. Defensively, we know what they're capable of. They had all these guys go to the pros last year. It's going to be the same case this year too. And, Tennessee's had a great run so far. You just mentioned it. Hendon Hooker is definitely in the running for Heisman this year. It's hard to believe that he'll be 25 come January, but, it's with COVID and the transfer portal, just him taking advantage of it. And last year, like I said, he had 31 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So he could have maybe gotten drafted last year had he declared. But I think this year, you're looking at a guy that might go in the second round. And if his play continues to excel, he might be in the first round. He might be this year's version of Kenny Pickett. So, shout out to Tennessee. This is their best team they've had since Peyton Manning's been there. So that's about 25 years ago. So, they're certainly on the upswing, though. As far as college football, though, I do want to transition more locally here. So Pitt football. We're coming into the season. Consensus Pitt football was that, they lost Kenny Pickett, they lost Jordan Addison to the portal to USC, but they get Keaton Slovis back from USC, who had a very good freshman year, but it was kind of lackluster the past couple of years. And then, your offensive line's coming back, and most of your defense is coming back. So people thought Pitt maybe not win a national championship, but they were going to be in the running for the ACC championship again. And, I actually made a bet with Antonio. You probably forgot about it before the game against West Virginia. I said this team was not going to win 10 games this year. I'm not really feeling it. He was like, oh, no. They'll win 10 games. They'll win 10 games. And, here we are. We're almost into November, and they're currently 4-3, and they're unranked. And Keaton Slovis has been an absolute disaster. So, Tony, with that being said, you still think this team wins 10 games?
No chance. The thing is, alright, here's the thing. Everyone had them winning 10 games, though, not just me. It's one of those things with college football is you never know what you're going to get out of these teams, especially with it being college students. But yeah, they're definitely not a 10-win team this year. It's pretty clear cut that they might not even be a 6-win team this year. But my money's still on them getting a bowl game. But right now, it's not looking good. Slovis is missing receivers left and right. But you could say a lot of things, like how many people, other than myself, expected TCU to be at the top of their level this year. How many people thought, this is one team I didn't think. Illinois, 17th team in the country right now, has a chance to win their side of the conference. I mean, it's one of those things where you never know what you're going to get. I mean, Kentucky, Tennessee, they're 2 top teams in the SEC right now. Ole Miss was undefeated until, so it's one of those things. You never know what's going to happen, but the Pitt football team, yeah, definitely not a good look right now. They go into Chapel Hill coming up next week. I'm suspecting that it's probably going to be a loss. Just in my opinion, UNC's offense is pretty solid. I think that Pitt's defense, it's been good, but the question is, will Pitt be able to outscore UNC because their offense is pretty solid?
Well, I just think, Pitt struggled pretty much every game. I mean, maybe you can argue the Rhode Island game where they hung 45 points, but even then, they still allowed Rhode Island to score 24 points. So, defensively, they haven't been great. They haven't been awful. I don't want to go that far. Offensively, they're a disaster. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought Matt Canada was running this team too besides the Steelers. But that's a whole other issue. But with that being said, Pitt football, Keaton Slovis, I actually talked to Max Brown, who's actually a former quarterback at USC, and he also transferred to Pitt too. He told me that Keaton Slovis is the kind of quarterback that makes a lot of really nice throws, but once he starts doing the ad-libbing and starts feeling like everything's on him to deliver, that's where when he starts to falter. And I think we're seeing that here with Pitt. Most people had him as a first or second round draft pick a couple years ago, and right now, I'd be surprised if he gets drafted. He might be a 6th, maybe 7th rounder at best. So, Keaton Slovis, it's just really unfortunate because I thought it would work because he was in a fresh environment. Pitt isn't as distracting heavy as USC can be at times, just because USC is a much bigger program with a lot more pedigree. But, it just hasn't worked out. And, I think we're really seeing, too, here that Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison covered a lot of the warts on the team. Whether they needed to play a touchdown, whatever it may be, Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison more times than not delivered. And I think Pat Narduzzi's, I don't want to say he's on the hot seat either. Like I think he's certainly responsible for part of this mess. But I mean, we've seen it. Like Pitt's just the kind of program where I think right now, like your best bet is them winning 7 to 8 games like every year. I just don't think, especially with all the NIL deals, Pitt can't compete with your big schools as far as financial status goes. So, Pitt, they might make one another ACC championship in 5 years. We'll see. They do have some recruits coming in. I think it was also huge that they had like a relatively successful year this year, but it's not looking to be the case this year. I just think from a recruiting standpoint, that might hurt them a bit in the future, but we'll see. I mean, that's all I can say.
Yeah, you still won the ACC championship last year. They beat Clemson soundly last year, but what we're saying is like what he said. Keaton Slove's supposed to be a first-round pick. Clearly isn't right now. He's clearly not even an NFL player right now. Not even like an undrafted player right now. But Kenny Pickett on the other side, he was one of those guys, 3-star recruit from New Jersey, was unheralded. Last year, I saw a lot of people saying that a lot of people predicting that Jared Gavey would be a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett in college last season. Kenny Pickett, was 7th ranked quarterback, according to Mel Kiper in 2021 draft. 2022, clearly probably the best quarterback in the draft, hands down. But Hendon Hooker did the same thing as him by going back that extra year, being a 24-year-old quarterback in college, and he's just absolutely eating everyone alive right now, Hendon Hooker. So, Hendon Hooker, solid quarterback, was good at Virginia Tech, transfers to Tennessee, really gets his stuff done. Good quarterback, and also a good person, creates a children's book with his brother. That's just another side note, he makes children's books too, which is pretty cool. But, back on the topic of Pitt, it's a tough season. Addison transfers out. Kenny Pickett too. They're not doing as good as people thought they were, but hey, things happen. Recruiting's still going well. He's still bringing people in, but I think the line. I still think the line would just look better when Kenny Pickett was quarterback. He's a little bit more mobile. I think the Pitt would be better off if they just played Big Patty instead, but they're going to keep Slovis going and see if he can turn it around, which he throws a good ball, but right now he's just not making the right decisions. He's missing wide receivers.
I think at this point, clearly Pitt's not winning anything significant, in my opinion. I think you throw out Patty, see what you have with him, and if all goes well, just throw him out there for next year and see where you go as far as performance-wise. And it's just so frustrating to me because Pitt, I think this year was really their year to prove that last year wasn't a fluke. And who knows, maybe this is just a very bad year. They'll rebound next year. I don't know, but it's just their receivers aren't as good. They can't get open. They can't create separation. It almost kind of sounds eerily similar to the Steelers situation right now. But it's just they don't do really anything well, with the exception of the running back, of course. Israel Abanikanda, who's arguably the best running back in all of college football, top 5 at worst. So, I think it's a shame with him too, because if Pitt had maybe 1 or 2 losses, you might see him having some serious Heisman buzz. And I do think he's going to be their not only player drafted, but he's going to be one of the few that's definitely going to get drafted to the NFL, whether it's as a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick. So, Israel Abanikanda has been the bright spot, one of the few bright spots on Pitt's football team this year so far. But do you have anything else regarding Pitt? You want to move on? Yeah,
I will say, Pitt still has their defense. Honestly, is still really good. That's not one of their weaknesses, which is a good thing. Their secondary's been pretty good, other than early on, which is usually a theme for Pitt. Is usually your secondary. It starts off a little slow, but they always step it up. AJ Woods had a better game. Aaron Callett had a better game as well, but Louisville ended up winning that game just because they were on the field longer. There's players you'll see in the NFL on defense for Pitt. I see Habakkuk Baldonado getting in. I don't know if he'll be drafted, but it's Savachi Dennis. So Pitt's still a ground to breed NFL talent, but right now it's not going to be last year where you had like Amari Mathis and Kenny Pickett, even a couple years prior with like Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones is on the right wing right now, Aaron Wyman, who sadly isn't playing right now, but yeah. Cal Adamitis too. Shout out to Cal, he's been on the show. But yeah, that's where I'm at with that. But I think it's a good transition point to now just talk about. We thought about this before the show started. Just talk about predicting some of these games coming out. The first one's tonight, Virginia Tech at NC State. NC State wins this one pretty soundly. I mean, Devin Leary's out for the year. That hurts. Virginia Tech, they're just nothing special this year. It's a rebuild year. New coach. My money's on NC State to win this one. I don't know if they could come in 13.5, but there's a chance. Here's my thought. NC State wins, doesn't cover.
Yeah, give me NC State too. They've been ranked this year, and like you said, Virginia Tech, they've not been very good this year. I mean, they really haven't been good for a few years now. So, give me the known commodity, NC State, by 2 touchdowns.
The next one is Utah and Washington State. So this is going to be one of those games where it's rather going to be a lot of points or it's going to be a little bit low scoring. My money obviously will be on Utah to win this game. However, I think Washington State is one of those teams that is consistently in every game they play. Even when they had Oregon on the ropes a little bit earlier this year, Jaden Delora is a solid quarterback, but I think after Utah's big victory over USC, they're going to get it done at Washington State.
Yeah, give me Utah. Washington State, once again, like another team that's not very good. Utah has been consistently ranked here over the last few years. Defensively, they're pretty good as well. Give me Utah over Washington State. But that leads us to our next game, which is probably one of the bigger games of the weekend. We got number 2 Ohio State against number 13 Penn State. Obviously, Penn State got their doors shellacked by Michigan, specifically their running game. Michigan had over 400 yards rushing last week in the defeat. Penn State and Ohio State. So I do think Penn State will put up a fight since they are in Happy Valley, and that they will use the home crowd to their advantage. But when it's all said and done, Ohio State's had their number going back since forever. There's really that one game back in 2016 where they did beat Ohio State at home. Penn State, they're a good team. They're a good program. They're going to win you 9. James Franklin as a coach is going to win you 9 to 10 games every year, bar minimum. But they just can't keep up with Michigan and Ohio State. And usually they lose to both teams every year. So I don't see that trend stopping this year. They got Michigan killed them last week. I think Ohio State's going to win this week too. So give me the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and I will say Penn State recently played Minnesota, which they won soundly. But the thing is, Minnesota did get kind of exposed against Illinois when Illinois just went in there and kind of dominated them on both sides of the ball. Minnesota had a big win against Michigan State, ends up not looking like a big win, and then lose to Purdue, which they were favored in, lose to Illinois as well, and a chance to, kind of get their season back on the schedule. A lot of people had them as a road dog against Penn State. That didn't happen there, but hey, Penn State now has to play Ohio State. Ohio State is literally coming in now after a big win over Iowa, 54-10. And I mean, it's not like Iowa's an FCS school. I mean, they beat Michigan State 49-20. I mean, they're literally blowing out every single team. I think that it continues in Happy Valley. I think they win by over 2 touchdowns. Penn State, they got a good team this year, but they're not top tier like a Michigan or Ohio State. The recruiting's just different, especially in Ohio State, where literally any good player from Ohio is probably going to go to Ohio State because that's the biggest school. I mean, how many other schools do you know that are in Ohio that are big name Power 5 schools that are in Ohio State? And that's the thing. They get the recruits. Ryan Day's a good coach. C.J. Stroud, Smith-Njigba on the offense. They're going to get this game done. And I think they're going to go into Happy Valley and win over 2 scores.
No, I agree with you. It's just one of those things. Penn State's always good, like I said, but it's just they're not on the same tier as Pitt. But I think watching Penn State, I think Pitt should be on that tier where they win 9 to 10 games every year. I think that should be Pitt's goal, and I think it's a very realistic goal. It's not that it's sustainable, but I think it's more of an attainable goal than trying to win an ACC championship every year. National championship to me is out of the question. They just don't have the players and personality to compete with an Alabama or Georgia. So, Pitt football and Penn State football, I think they're a lot more alike than people want to give credit to them for. But with that being said,
I do want to add too. I think Pitt football, if you look at the past 2 years, it's been better than Penn State football, winning the ACC title and also having a better record the year before as well. This year it's obviously Penn State, but Sean Clifford is back for the 700th year or whatever I'm going to say. But they're comparable programs right now. James Franklin and Pat Narduzzi recruit similar players. They recruit the same market. Pat Narduzzi's recruiting has been great for Pitt. They were top 25 last year. So I think this year obviously is just a year for Pitt. Penn State clearly would beat Pitt this year, but last year when they had Kenny Pickett, Pitt would have beat them. It's just going to be like one of those things for the next couple of years. Both coaches are. Here's the thing: both coaches are great at recruiting, but they both aren't good game coaches. And I think Pitt and Penn State fans, that's one thing they can agree on.
Fair enough. With that being said, we are going to take a quick timeout for an ad break. So you are listening to the 42nd Annual WPPJ Rockathon benefiting the Early Learning Institute. Stop by our table on the second floor of Lawrence Hall, right outside the Point Cafe, in order to make a donation, buy some WPPJ merchandise, or enter one of our 3 raffles. So once again, this is the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. We're coming from you from Lawrence Hall here at Point Park University. That was our quick timeout. Then we can go back to college football. Now our next game, which is
TCU at West Virginia.
Oh, baby.
The number 7 TCU, led by Max Duggan. TCU, one of those teams, had 17 or 18 out of the 22 starters returned this year. They've been solid. West Virginia, on the other hand, just got blown out by Texas State by 38 points. Hey, when they're at West Virginia, they're in a lot better team. But thing is, they're playing cold right now. JT Daniels had a rough game last game. I think TCU gets into West Virginia, gets things done. They've just been a good team. And in close games, even against Oklahoma State, they've been getting it done. They got down early against Kansas State, got it done. I think the teams they've been playing are better than West Virginia. I think they're well prepared, and they're going to go into Morgantown and get the win.
Talk about another quarterback that's had a massive fall from grace. JT Daniels. I remember his shortened 2020 season at Georgia. He came on midway through the halfway point of the season in 2020. He really started to put it together towards the end of that year. 2021 was supposed to be the year that JT Daniels established himself as a first-round draft pick in the NFL. And of course, he got injured. Georgia went with Stetson Bennett to back up, and they pretty much never looked back. Bennett took the reins from Daniels, and of course, they won a national championship. So, JT Daniels ended up going to a worse situation. Georgia's pretty much a perennial championship contender now. And West Virginia, they are what they are. They're kind of like a 7-8 win team at best. So, JT Daniels certainly has looked great this year. Another quarterback I think that might not get drafted next year, maybe a late 6th or 7th round pick at best. But with that being said, TCU, how about TCU, top 10? Big win recently over Oklahoma State. A thriller. They came back. They were down 3 touchdowns, I believe. So, TCU, do I think they can win the Big 12? I actually do think they can. Now, whether or not that results in a playoff berth will be determined, but they were in a similar boat about 8 years ago. Remember them and Baylor, they had really good years, but I forget who was last spot in the playoff that year. I think it was the first year they did. It was either 2015, it might have been 2014, 2015, 2016, one of the 3 years.
It was Ohio State.
Okay, yeah. So, but yeah, there was a TCU or Baylor. They were trying to vie for a playoff spot late this season.
Yeah, they ended up being 5th and 6th. They took Ohio State. Yeah. Alabama was taken in that. I believe so.
If I'm not mistaken,
it was Oregon, Florida State, not in particular order. Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State. What was the last one? Florida State.
Was that? Are you sure that was the first year? Was that the first year?
That was the first year.
Okay.
Yeah, no particular order though.
I'll take your word for it though. But I mean, TCU, they are putting themselves in a position to make another appearance, hopefully in the college football playoff. No, it'd be their first time. My mistake by saying that. But my point is, I'm going to take TCU over WVU, and I think TCU, I think they have a real shot to make some noise because Texas hasn't looked that great this year. I know they're ranked, but they've had their moments where they haven't looked their best. And Oklahoma right now is a total dumpster fire. I figured Oklahoma would still be a top 15 program, but this year it's just not it. I do expect them to bounce back though, because Oklahoma is another one of those legacy programs in college football. But that's besides the point. Our next game is a little bit more. If you look at it at face value, you can say this game's crap. But with the recent developments, this game actually might turn out to be pretty decent. We have Notre Dame at Syracuse. Now Syracuse, for my fellow casuals, is not known to be a football school. It's more known for basketball. They've had success in basketball over the last 40 years or so. Football has kind of been a bit of a joke. No disrespect, but that's just facts. They've really been not competitive in the ACC as far as football and basketball goes nowadays. But they were ranked. They were undefeated up until last week, where they were actually beating Clemson for most of the game, but Clemson is a good team, so they came back and won. But Syracuse put up a nice fight. They easily could have won that game had a few things gone their way. Officials, wink, wink. Anyways, Syracuse and Notre Dame. Notre Dame hasn't been great this year, but I don't know. Syracuse, they're kind of like watching them play. They kind of grind it out. They're not going to dominate teams. They have a solid running attack, and their defense has been pretty solid. But I'm going to take Notre Dame. I guess you can consider this an upset, but I do think Notre Dame on paper is more talented than Syracuse, but obviously Syracuse has been the better team. But I am going to take Notre Dame. I think it's going to be another close game, like say 24-21. So
yeah, there's no doubt it's going to be a close game. And Notre Dame, if you look at recruiting, there's no comparison between Notre Dame and Syracuse. However, recruiting obviously isn't as big of a deal as you think. Tennessee did beat Alabama. Pitt won the ACC despite not being a team that recruits like Clemson. So what I'm going to say is my money is in the Carrier Dome at Syracuse. I think they get it done against Notre Dame. I think this Notre Dame team isn't as good as other Notre Dame teams. This is kind of just a rebuilding year with a new coach and stuff. They did lose to Marshall earlier in the year. They struggled against Cal, who lost to Colorado. Yeah, I'm taking Syracuse, especially after last week's performance. I think they'll be fired up after, they looked bad at the end of the last week. I think they come back and get a bounce back win this week. So my money's on Syracuse. Garrett Schrader has looked amazing. Offense has looked fine. Last week, you're just down in Death Valley. It's tough to close out a game in Death Valley unless you're Chris Wood from Pitt. But yeah, my money is still on Syracuse for now. I think this is their best team since the Eric Dungy team that won 10 games back in 2018. And I do want to say, I looked at it. Yes, it was Ohio State, Alabama, and then it was Oregon and Florida State. It was the game Jameis Winston had the fumble. So if you're curious.
it was really, not to go off topic, but that game was really the game that established Jameis Winston as a turnover machine. When you think about it, because I remember his Heisman year, he didn't really throw a lot of picks. He was amazing, and then that second year, he threw over 20 interceptions. So that should have been a red flag to Tampa Bay. Just by the way.
You want to hear a fun fact? I was at Jameis Winston's first college game for Florida State. They played
against Pitt. Dude, he dominated Pitt. I remember watching that live.
41-13.
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd's debut too.
Yeah, I remember watching that game actually. It was an ESPN game, and I remember Pitt. I don't know if Pitt scored first. They tied the game. It was 1-2. I thought, holy cow, Pitt against number 11 Florida State. I believe that's what they were ranked at the time. And I was like, wow, this actually might be a good game. And after that, Jameis Winston absolutely tore the defense apart, and he was en route to win a national championship and a Heisman Trophy that year, though. So that's Jameis Winston's life story for you in a nutshell, though.
And I do want to go back to TCU, though. And you asked if they could make the playoff. Here's the thing, or not the playoff, but if they can win the Big 12. The only game is at Texas. Every single year, Texas and TCU is usually competitive. TCU got one on them. It was that. I think they interchanged wins. Texas got the one, TCU got the other. You can fact check me on that, but I do know for a fact they split the last couple of years. That's gonna be their one game. I think other than that, you still Iowa State, which hasn't been as good this year. It's kind of ever since Brock Purdy left, it's going to be tougher for them. You have West Virginia this week, and then you have Texas Tech at home. Texas Tech, that's going to be a tough game. I think Texas Tech's improved, but when you're home, you play better. The real games are going to be at Texas and at Baylor. At Baylor, Baylor is another team. They have a new quarterback in Blake Shapen this year, but I think that they can get it done in Waco, Texas. So, yeah, I personally think that they might be meeting up again with Oklahoma State in the future. Oklahoma State had a big win against Texas. Honestly, I think TCU has a chance to make the playoff, and, Oklahoma State, I think, has an equal amount of a chance to get in from the Big 12 as well. So, hey, we just got to play it by ear and see how they do.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think TCU, if any chance for them to make a serious push for a playoff, now would be the year. We just mentioned Oklahoma's down. Texas, they're still finding their way. I know they're ranked, but they've not looked great to me. Iowa State, like you mentioned, talk about fall from grace. Matt, what's his name for the coach?
It's Campbell.
Is it Matt Campbell?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Matt Campbell. If you remember back in 2020, Iowa State was actually a top 10 team at the end of the year. And, they had, Breece Hall, who's in the NFL with the Jets now, and Brock Purdy, too. Those are their two best players, arguably. They were a top 10 team. And, I think Matt Campbell, he had a ton of offers to go somewhere else and coach a bigger school. And, where he made the mistake was Iowa State is where it's at. I want to stay here and build a foundation. Which I understand that's good and well. That's certainly good and well, but at the same time, it's a shame to see how far Iowa State's fallen. And you mentioned it too, Baylor is not ranked either. So just going back to TCU, this year would probably be their best chance to make some serious damage. So
I agree, and I think Iowa State. I still have trust that he can get the program back on track. I mean, they're still at least competitive every single game, which is nice, but, Deckers, the new quarterback, he's still young. The team is just a young team this year. I think everyone expected them to just take a little step back, especially with, they even had Jordan Montgomery in the past couple of years, but, yeah. They have Oklahoma this week. That's usually a team that they always compete with, but Oklahoma, I think they've been looking good lately. Against Kansas, they look great. I think Oklahoma, now they have Dylan Gabriel back, they'll definitely bounce back this season. I suspect that they'll win 8 games, 9 games max, but, they still have Oklahoma State later in the year. So, but, hey, anyways, I do want to keep going with this. And it's Florida at Georgia. Well, Florida versus Georgia, that's always, neutral site field.
Yeah, they play Jacksonville.
It's the largest cocktail party, or whatever it's called. It's really not going to be a party for Gators fans. I just think Georgia comes out. I mean, they had a game where they struggled against Missouri. They had some games where people were questioning, is this Georgia team as good as they usually are? They lost some players last year. James Cook and Jordan Davis were just two of the big names. Oh, George Pickens, too. But this year, it's still Georgia, still top of the recruiting board every single year. Give me Georgia in this one. Florida, I mean, you got a quarterback in Richardson who's just a solid player right now, but I think going into this game against the number 1 team in the country, he's going to have some struggles. So yeah, give me Georgia on that one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Teddy. Florida's another one of those teams. They always have the talent to hypothetically compete with Alabama, Georgia, but they just never put it all together. And they really haven't had a dynamic quarterback that's actually a legit Heisman candidate either. So, defensively they've had some studs, specifically at cornerback. I know that Kyle Pitts, the tight end, was drafted a few years ago as well, but yeah, give me Georgia to win. I think they're going to win pretty convincingly too. They're just a much better team at this point in the season as well. I know Georgia, they had a few hiccups there, but they still managed to win those games and relatively dominate for the most part. While I don't think they're as good as last year's squad, I think Georgia's squad this year is still, even then, I still think they're the best team in all of college football. So, yeah, give me Georgia to win. I don't really see how Florida even wins at all. So,
yeah, the next one we have is Oregon at Cal. Okay, so California has a real good game against Notre Dame, almost wins on the road, then comes out, smashes Arizona the next week, then they get smashed by Washington State, and then all of a sudden, they lose to Colorado. One of the worst teams, arguably the worst Power 5 team, they lose, and then you have a chance against Washington, you're leading in the second half, lose that game as well. California's year is done now. I mean, a team that I thought actually didn't look terrible out of the Pac-12 here. I mean, the Pac-12 actually looked good with Utah, UCLA, USC, Oregon. Even Oregon State has looked really good. So you got 4 or 5 teams that are just solid teams in the Pac-12. But Cal, they're starting to phase out. They're not one of them. And another team's Washington is even pretty good too. Even Washington State, I think if they're in an easier conference, it might even be better. But yeah, that's off topic though. California season's done. Bo Nix, Oregon, they're really starting to find themselves. They had that tough loss against, Georgia. Here's the thing though, who's really beating Georgia? Oregon by 35.
Oregon by 35. I don't know if I'm going to go by that much, but I will say this: Oregon, they got off to a bit of a slow start again this year. Oregon is always talented. They always find a way to be like a very competitive. They're kind of like in that tier with Penn State and Florida. They're always very good, but they're just not good enough to get over the hill for some reason, whatever reason that may be. But Oregon, they're clearly a better team than California. I mean, when's the last time you can say California was like a legit school program? Not to say that they still are, but when's the last time they were like very good? Like that's what I'm trying to say. I don't even think they're even that good with Jared Goff at quarterback. So California, it's not really there right now. Not really there this year. So give me Oregon. Give me the Ducks. I'll say 14 points. I'm not going to say 35 because I do.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm about 35, but I think Oregon's going to come in and dominate Cal.
No, I agree.
They look red hot. Yeah, but the next game, this one's tough. Oklahoma State at Kansas State. Who do you got?
Yeah, give me Oklahoma State. I know they suffered a tough loss against TCU, but Spencer Sanders, he's been amazing this year. Probably another quarterback we haven't talked about enough as far as being in the running for a Heisman. If Oklahoma had beat TCU, we could probably have the conversation now that Oklahoma State's probably a top 5 team right now. So, their only issue right now at Oklahoma State, I don't have their schedule right in front of me, but I just assume they play Oklahoma, and they've usually had some trouble with Oklahoma in the past, regardless of how good Oklahoma is. Those are the rivalry games, so rivalry games, no matter how good or bad your opponent is, they're usually always pretty tight, so that might be their most difficult game left, in my opinion. So, we'll see, but right now, Kansas State, they're a solid program as well. They've kind of been on the up and coming here past couple of years. They've found ways to be competitive, although, the whole NIL thing. So, with that being said, though, I still like Oklahoma State. They've pretty much been pretty consistently good all year long. They had the one hiccup at TCU. They should have won that game, but a couple of mistakes down the line in the fourth quarter really costed them. So I do think that Oklahoma State will win. So give me the Cowboys.
I'm in agreement. I think Cowboys win this game. Here's the thing. Kansas State, hell of a rushing attack. I mean, you got Adrian Martinez and Deuce Vaughn. That's the question. Can Oklahoma State, can they stop this rushing attack? I think they do. I think Oklahoma State, it's one of those games that I really easily can see Kansas State just pounding it and just winning this game, especially after a tough loss against TCU. But Oklahoma State has just come from behind win against the Longhorns. Huge win for the Cowboys last week. I mean, Oklahoma State's starting to look really good. Spencer Sanders, like you said, looking amazing. He's a Heisman candidate as well, especially if this team can bounce back, win out, and then beat TCU. I think if they do that, why not Spencer Sanders win Heisman, because he's been efficient as well as been turning the ball over as much. I think that this team is solid. Like you said, at Oklahoma is going to be their tough game. At Oklahoma is starting to look better. But, yeah, I think Oklahoma State, they're both different teams. Oklahoma State's passes like crazy. Kansas State runs like crazy. But I think when you put the ball in Spencer Sanders' hands, I think they have a better chance. And that's what they did last week against Texas. They'll do the same this week.
I agree with you. With that being said, we'll take our second quick timeout. You're listening to the 42nd Annual WPPJ Rockathon benefiting the Early Learning Institute. Stop by our table on the second floor of Lawrence Hall right outside of Point Cafe in order to make a donation, buy some WPPJ merchandise, or enter one of our 3 raffles. So if you're listening, if you're walking around campus and you want to just stop by and say hello to us, we're pretty friendly guys. I don't think I'm pretty mean. But if you want to say hi, make a donation, buy some merch, please do so. We'll be here for the next hour and a half roughly. So there it is. But back to our show though. What's our next game?
Our next game, it's Wake Forest at Louisville. And here Louisville takes advantage of a terrible Pitt offense last week. You know, Pitt could have had 21 points in the first half at 7. Yeah, they did not look good. But Louisville, they are playing better now. But like I said, their offense didn't look too good either last week. They only had 1 offensive touchdown. You know, it took them forever to, get some scores against Pitt. Wake Forest is Sam Hartman this year. 18 parries, look amazing. My money is on Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest not only wins this, but they'll cover the spread as well. So give me Wake Forest at Louisville. I'm pretty sure Wake Forest, they came off a win last week. Other than Clemson, I think that might be their only loss this year. So, yeah, give me Wake Forest at Louisville. Louisville, I don't think they get it done 2 weeks in a row. Wake Forest is a different animal than Pitt this year. It's sad to say.
Oh, no, for sure. Wake Forest is definitely better than Pitt this year. You know what I find so amazing is Wake Forest, they still, I don't think they'll make the playoff, but they still have an outside shot. I mean, all they need is for Clemson to lose maybe 1 game, maybe 2. It just depends, and who knows? Anything's possible. Because honestly, I know Clemson's undefeated right now, but they have not looked that great. I mean, they were trailing Syracuse, and I understand Syracuse is ranked this year, but I mean, if you're Clemson, I mean, the quarterback play has just been so subpar since they've lost Trevor Lawrence. I like DJ. I think he's a very talented quarterback, but he's just not been. He's been a lot better this year than last year, but he's still not been that guy that most people envisioned. He was, once again, another quarterback that was supposed to be a first-round pick, and I don't know if he's gonna bow out this year and try the draft. I wouldn't do it if I were him. I'd come back for another year and see if I can get better. But he's just another quarterback. It's just not clicking right now for him. I'm not sure if that's the coaching. I just don't know if he's hurt. I don't know what it is, but he's talented. I don't think he's awful, but he's just not been that guy. He was supposed to be a Heisman candidate too. They benched him last week, so that's not a good sign. It almost reminds me a bit, not exactly, but almost the whole Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence situation. Clemson's defense was still really good, and they actually made a playoff with Kelly Bryant. But they knew that Kelly Bryant, while he was talented, I do think Kelly Bryant was talented as well. He just couldn't get it done. So they made the move. They brought in Trevor Lawrence, once again another highly touted prospect, and they won a national championship with him. So the quarterback they have now, I'm not sure. The backup right now, I'm not sure if he can do that. But he, once again, he's another highly touted quarterback. So I think. I don't know if DJ's going to start this weekend, but I would certainly take a look at the backup quarterback this weekend. But that's just me. But that's going. I'm going way off a tangent. I do want to add though.
Okay. DJ has just not been. He's just turning the ball over too much. He's not taking care of the ball. He had a couple turnovers last week. One that ended up. I mean, honestly, if DJ doesn't fumble that ball, they could have went in and tied the game up at 14-14. Instead, Syracuse goes up 21-7. If that never happens, I think Clemson might win that game soundly. But guess what? That kept them in the game, and that's the thing. They're not going to be able to get it done if he doesn't turn his play around, which he is a really talented quarterback. But you can't do the thing with Kelly Bryant, where you put in Klubnik. Because here's the thing, as highly touted as he is, I forgot what state it was, but he was considered the best player in the state, and he was the #1 quarterback coming into this year. Just watching, I don't think he's ready yet to take over a starting role, especially, down the stretch of the season. I mean, if you saw him against Syracuse, yes, he did fine. He held his own. I mean, obviously on the ground he's looking great, but when it comes to making reads, he's not ready to play against college football teams like this. He's not. Trevor Lawrence was. Trevor Lawrence was another guy. He was just one of those outlier quarterbacks in college. Trevor Lawrence was an outlier, and Clemson, they still got the game, they still got the win. Their defense, they're gonna keep them in it no matter what happens. So but there's my tangent on it, and that leads to number 17 Illinois at Nebraska.
Give me number 17, Illinois. Nebraska, they're still in transition. It's going to be a couple years before they even get back to being like a mediocre program. Obviously, they fired Scott Frost in the middle of the season. Illinois, they've been kind of another scrappy team that's found their way in the top 25. So I expect them to continue that scrappiness and beat up on a Nebraska team that's, I don't know if they're feeling pretty low right now, but they're not going anywhere this year. They're just not a good team, Nebraska, unfortunately. It's just sad to see the whole thing with Scott Frost fail because he did play college football there. I don't know if you guys have been following Scott Frost, but he was before at Nebraska. He was the head coach at UCF. They were unofficial national champions. So, it's unfortunate to see he gets fired, but I have a sneaky suspicion someone else will hire him again, and he'll probably get his act together, and he'll probably get another job here pretty soon, I imagine. But right now, I'm gonna take Illinois. Nebraska, just once again, they're a team in transition, so I like the Fighting Illinois chances.
I agree. I think Illinois wins the game. But I think Nebraska, they competed against Purdue. You get a week off now. I think that they've actually looked better rather than worse than with Frost. I think that they just have a little bit more fire underneath of them. They're still 3-4 though. Illinois looked like one of the better teams in the Big Ten. I mean, they came out and they completely smacked Minnesota a couple weeks ago. Nebraska's well rested too. I think you're going to get a game where it's going to be high energy. I think Nebraska actually covers the spread, but Illinois does get the win. It's going to be a tight game. I wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska actually pulls off the upset. I'm not saying Illinois is, not really a 17 team. I think they're a top 25 team in the country. They have one of the top rushing attacks. Tommy DeVito's look good. Chase Brown, honestly, he's been the best running back in the country with over 1,000 yards rushing. But I still think that Nebraska hangs in there, has a chance to win this game. I think they could win this game, but my money is still in Illinois to get it done. I just think it's going to be a tight game.
So our next game would be Cincinnati at USF. USF hasn't really been a player. UCF. Okay, I stand corrected. My apologies. No, it's all good in the hood, man. It's all good in the hood. But Cincinnati Bearcats, they're going to be at Central Florida to take on the Knights. Central Florida's been a little bit better as of recent memory since the departure of Scott Frost, but Cincinnati, they've established themselves in the AAC. Is it the AAC?
American Athletic Conference.
Yes, it is. They've established themselves as a solid team year in and year out. They're pretty much ranked every year. They're coming off a playoff berth, the Bearcats. So, they're riding high. They've had another solid year. They're ranked in the top 20 again. So, UCF, though, they still haven't gotten back to the magic of the unofficial national championship. So, with that being said, I do like Cincinnati to win. I think it's going to be a close game, though, but I like the Bearcats overall in the end.
Yeah, this is one of those games where you just don't know who to pick. And UCF scored 70 points against Temple, and then they lose by 3 touchdowns to ECU. And the thing is, Cincinnati, they just beat SMU by 2 points. Tight game against USF, tight game against Tulsa. Every game they've been in has been pretty tight, other than, the Indiana game where they just come out and pounded them in Miami of Ohio, which should be Miami of Ohio, and they lost to Bowling Green. But I think UCF being home, I think they get a bounce back win. I think their stadium's now called the Bounce House, I'm pretty sure. Dumb name, but bounce back in the Bounce House. I think UCF's going to get this one done at home. And Cincinnati, 20th ranked. I wouldn't be shocked if Cincinnati comes in here and does what ECU did. Just comes out here and dominates. But I think UCF gets their act together. I think John Reese Plumlee has a solid game, gets it done in UCF. I think they get that offense rolling again. And that leads right to Missouri at the newly ranked number 25, South Carolina. The spread's 3.5.
Well, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt you. South Carolina's ranked now.
They're 25th in the nation. They just beat Kentucky, and then they beat Texas A&M last week back to back.
Well, that'll do it. But I don't want to sidetrack. But I just considering how they started and how Georgia absolutely beat the brakes off them, the fact that they're ranked to me is just kind of strange.
Mm-hmm. You know, they did beat the brakes off of Oregon, and they've been one of the best teams in the country since.
Fair enough. But you can get back to it. I don't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're fine. South Carolina's on a roll. I mean, I know they beat Kentucky without Will Levis, but they did beat Texas A&M last week. Not a lot of people had that. This offense now with Spencer Rattler, I mean, it's all starting to come into fruition now. As number 25 in the nation, newly ranked. I know Missouri almost got the win against Georgia, but I think that's just one of those games where they came ready to play. Georgia underestimated them. I think South Carolina knows that Missouri and them always have tough fights. I think South Carolina gets this one done, and I think they cover the spread. I think they win 38-28.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. I mean, South Carolina to me, like I said, I'm still shocked because they looked really bad the first couple weeks of the season. But Spencer Rattler, he was another quarterback that was highly touted. Was at Oklahoma, had a strong finish to the 2020 season. Came into the 2021 season with a lot of expectations. He was the consensus #1 quarterback in the 2021 draft or 2022 draft, excuse me. And we also who would have thought Spencer Rattler was the consensus. Him and Sam Howell, they were the consensus 2 best quarterbacks that were going to be in the draft, and they ended up being Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis. Yeah, I'm sure everyone thought that, but that's besides the point. Going back, Spencer Rattler, this is really his last year to prove himself that he's still a viable option in the NFL. I do believe he will make the NFL, not as a first-round pick, but I do think maybe 3rd or 4th rounds. That's entirely plausible, but it's just amazing to me, just how this is why you can't, take projections and mock drafts. You can't write it up to you as gospel, and it's just you see these guys flame out. The guys that are expected to perform and be top picks, they sometimes falter. And the guys that are unsung heroes, like the Kenny Pickett's, like the Hendon Hookers of this year, they come out of nowhere and surprise you. And their draft stock dramatically increases. So, I wish nothing but the best for Spencer Rattler. I know he hasn't had the best reputation over the past couple of years. So, with that being said, give me South Carolina. I think they'll win.
Yeah, I agree. South Carolina, they got a squad this year. I mean, honestly, down the stretch of you have Tennessee and Clemson back-to-back. I think they're going to finish 8-4 this year, which I think that's really good considering how they did last year. It was a rebuilding year for last year. Beamer, though, starting to look like a real good coach. They're starting to get players coming in. South Carolina, I think will be one of those teams that are going to be a pretty solid skill for the next couple of seasons. But yeah, that leads to Kentucky at Tennessee. We talked about Tennessee earlier. Kentucky hasn't looked as good. Will Levis gets hurt. Now all of a sudden their offense really hasn't been in sync lately. I think Tennessee, they've been in sync lately. They've been looking great. Destroyed UT Martin last week. Obviously they beat Alabama 52-49. Tennessee, I think they get this one done at home against Kentucky. They're going to continue on, and I think that this team is going to make the SEC championship game. That's my opinion. I think they still have Georgia in the season now, so yeah. I did forget that they didn't play Georgia later in the season, but I still think regardless they'll be in that SEC championship game, just because I think that might be their only time where they kind of have a skid. But they obviously would get the tiebreaker against Alabama. Unless that gives another one-loss team, there would be a lot of loopholes for it not to work out that way. So, yeah, I think Tennessee wins this week against Kentucky, that being said.
Oh, I didn't even realize you switched over to Kentucky and Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, that's my fault. So, yeah, I'll take Tennessee too. Like Tony said, they're on a roll. Hendon Hooker, we've mentioned his name like 20 times already in the show so far, but he's had that great of a year. And, Kentucky, I think they're good, but clearly they're like in that class with Penn State, Oregon. We've mentioned it. Pitt, I would even throw Pitt in there. They're like really good.
It's a good comparison.
Yeah, exactly. So but when it comes time to play the big dogs, they just can't hang. And I think Tennessee this year can be classified as a big dog. After all, they did beat Alabama, so all Kentucky's ranked. While Will Levis is projected to be a first-round pick this year as well, believe it or not, the reality is I think Tennessee is a better team than Kentucky from top to bottom on both sides of the ball. And I think Kentucky can hang for a minute, but we saw they lost to Ole Miss. That was their first true test of the season. And I think they'll lose to Tennessee. I just don't think they stack up well against them, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. They just don't compare. I just think they're not there yet. Maybe they can continue to build upon it in the ensuing years, though, but I wouldn't count on it because Kentucky's not known to have sustainable success when it comes to football. So we'll see how that plays out, though. I think Kentucky will give them somewhat of a fighter's chance, but ultimately, I think Tennessee wins. I don't want to say pretty convincingly, but I think they'll win somewhat rather comfortably. So.
Yeah, I agree. Tennessee's got a team this year. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Georgia, Tennessee in a couple weeks. It's going to be a big game. But I do want to go on to USC and Arizona. USC recently had a pretty heartbreaking loss to Utah. Definitely puts a divot into their chances of making the college football playoff. You win that game, you got a good chance to win the Pac-12. Now you got a lot of things. You still have UCLA in the season. Pretty sure you're still gonna have to get Oregon if you make the Pac-12 championship. But now you got to add Arizona. Arizona has Jaden DeLora. I actually made a mistake earlier in the show saying that DeLora was on Washington State. But that's beside the point. I just realized I said that. But yeah, Arizona has Jaden DeLora, who's looked really good this year. I mean, Arizona's improved from last year. Honestly, if you don't improve from the year you had last year, that's pretty rough. And I think they were like 2-10, 1-11. Well, no, they were 0 for last year. They were really bad last year. But that's beside the point. USC comes into this game against a better Arizona team than they were last year. USC gets it done on the road at Arizona. Listen, USC, heartbreaking loss last week, like I said. But this week, they're going to come out with a fire. They need this game. Whatever the spread is, I think they cover it as well. You know how it is, especially with college students motivated to play this game. They're going to be motivated. They're going to want revenge after what happened to them last week. So, yeah, give me USC.
Yeah, give me USC to win pretty convincingly. Like you said, they suffered a very tough loss last week who did they play last week again?
They played Utah.
Utah, yeah. I knew it was Utah. You have those brain farts from around there sometimes. But, yeah, USC, they're going to have that bad taste in their mouth. And I think they're going to hand Arizona a pretty big one. I think it's not going to be very close. This is Caleb Williams. This has Caleb Williams with 5 touchdown passes written all over it. Jordan Addison with 150 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns written all over it. Give me USC to win by at least 20 points. Arizona's not a very good football program either. They're more just known for basketball. So yeah, USC. They're still a solid team. They're a top 10 team as of right now. And I still think there is an outside chance they can get to a playoff, but it's going to require a lot of losing and a lot of winning on their part as well, though. But I do think that they take care of business against the Arizona Wildcats this upcoming Saturday.
Yep, and that leads to Michigan State. Usually a tight game. Every rivalry is usually a tight game. But this year, Michigan's got a squad, came in, destroyed Penn State this year. Michigan State's had some woes. I mean, you lose to Washington. I mean, you had a tough game against Wisconsin, too. Yeah, I know that they beat Wisconsin, but it's just, they're not They're 3-4 this year. Michigan is a legit playoff team, I think, this year. I think that them or Ohio State will get in from the Big Ten. That's going to be your playoff team. I think that they need this game. It's a rivalry game, but Michigan, yeah, they're gonna get it done against Michigan State. There's no doubt about it. Michigan just has a better team this year, and their defense, I think, is gonna lock up Michigan State. Michigan State just not look good this year. Michigan, on the other hand, give me Michigan in Ann Arbor, and even though it's a rivalry game, whatever the spread is, I think they're covering it.
Before I give you my pick, I do have to do the top of the hour ad break. Thank you for tuning in to the 42nd annual WPPJ Rockathon. We are broadcasting live from the second floor of Lawrence Hall and raising money for the Early Learning Institute. The Early Learning Institute provides therapeutic early intervention services to families in the Pittsburgh region. For over 60 years, Telly has been helping children with developmental delays be able to reach their true potential. We would like to thank the Gender and Sexuality Spectrum Alliance here at Point Park for their support of our event. Once again, this is the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. We're coming to you live from the Lawrence Hall here at Point Park University. Once again, if you want to stop by and say hi, buy some merch, do some donations, we're here till 6 o'clock today, so if you want to stop by and say hello once again, please do so. But back to our program. You said Michigan and Michigan State. Give me Michigan State once again. Another team that came into the year with a lot of expectations, but have been absolutely disappointing to say the least this year. You know, I understand they lost Kenneth Walker last year in the draft, but they should not be this bad. Now, I understand Michigan State might not be at the level at Ohio State or Michigan or even Penn State's even to a degree is at, but like the fact that them and Pitt, to me, as far as disappointments come, they're definitely up there, top of the list as far as ranked teams heading into the season and where we are right now. But Michigan, they're just a better team defensively. We know offensively their run game is probably one of the best in the country, led by Blake Corum. So, yeah, give me Michigan. I really don't want to say too much. I think it's going to be a blowout, 20-plus points, that type of game. So give me the Wolverines. And I do expect the Wolverines to run the table up until the big game, which is on Thanksgiving weekend against the Ohio State Buckeyes. So give me Michigan.
Yeah, and that leads to the next game. This one's actually a tough game. Ole Miss coming off a really tough loss against LSU. Gets outscored 42-3 after going up big. But they're going on the road against a Texas A&M team that has been struggling this year. Yeah, this is a tough game. It's due for Ole Miss at Texas A&M. Now that is a College Station. But their rushing defense has been rough this year. They have not been able to guard their run. And Ole Miss, on the other hand, led by Judkins, get 250 yards per game on the ground. Yeah, my money is on Ole Miss to win this one. They get it done on the ground. I think it's going to be a tight game. But I think they need to bounce back, especially having that tough loss again at LSU last week. Jackson Dart, transfer from USC. He hasn't looked bad at all. Like I said, Judkins really been carrying in that offense. I think they get it done in College Station, but I think Texas A&M is one of those teams where, they can get it done at home, but they haven't been consistent at all. I think Ole Miss picks it back up this week.
Here's what I'll say. So, first of all, I'm going to pick Ole Miss to win the game. Ole Miss looked really good all year long. They had that hiccup to LSU last week, who LSU, for as much as they've been in a lot of turmoil over the past couple of years with COVID and Coach Ed Orgeron, I do think that they've had a relatively successful year so far. They've won 6 games already, which is more than they've pretty much won the past 2 years. So, LSU, they're certainly on a good track. But same thing with Ole Miss. Ole Miss has been pretty solid as well this year. With that being said, they still should not have lost to LSU. Ole Miss I think they really hurt their chances as far as trying to compete for a playoff spot. But they're still good. Texas A&M, though, talk about a team that underachieves year after year. Let's be real about it. Texas A&M, if you look at recruiting rankings year after year, they're always top 5. But for some reason, they just don't have the consistency. And the quarterback play. When's the last time Texas A&M's had a legit, solid quarterback? What, Johnny Manziel?
Yeah, Kelvin Vaughn wasn't bad in college.
He was good, but I'm talking about that guy that like can be like in the conversation for a Heisman.
Yeah,
a guy that's going to be drafted in the first.
Your guy was last
I mean, they had Kyler Murray, but he transferred.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, when you think about it, they've really not had any stability at quarterback whatsoever, and their weapons, like they've always, to me, like it's just, I don't know. It's weird. They always have the best recruiting class, but they don't ever seem to turn out the prospects to the NFL. It's just a weird situation to me.
Yeah, and there was that one running back they had a couple years ago that was real solid too for Texas A&M.
Is it Isaiah Spiller?
Spiller,
yeah. Yeah, Isaiah Spiller. Yeah.
But yeah, they've had some some people here and there, but like you said, like Kellen Mond was a tremendous college football quarterback, but he never been out to the NFL. And even Johnny Manziel, took over the league. He never really panned out either. So yeah, Ole Miss on the other hand, I mean, they've got some players in the league. A.J. Brown, that's one. You got another one in DK Metcalf. Ole Miss, on the other hand, they have been producing that talent. And I think Ole Miss, they're a talented team. I mean, obviously, that loss to LSU was pretty rough last week. I don't think they're a top 15 team in the country, personally. But I still think that they're a solid team this year. And I think that, like I said earlier, they get it done in College Station. And that leads to Pitt at UNC. It's a game we've been waiting to predict. You want me to go first on it?
Yeah, you're the big guy here.
This game's going to be close. I'm going to say it right now. I think Pitt's defense keeps them in this game. I mean, Pitt's passing defense has been good, for the past couple of weeks now. Even the last week, like I said, the defense played good against Louisville. The fact of the matter is they couldn't hold on to the football. Keaton Slovis did not have a good game. I think Slovis has the potential to be a good quarterback, but he just hasn't been making the right decisions at all. So that being said, I think UNC just makes more plays than Pitt. I think that their offense is on the field more than Pitt's offense is, and I think UNC gets it done at home. It will be a good game though. Mac Brown, as head coach for UNC, has yet to beat Pat Narduzzi when he's been coach for Pitt. Before then, UNC was pretty dominant against Pitt. Ever since the Maneki Carco Bowl, they beat him every single time in the ACC up until Mac Brown took over, which Pat Narduzzi won both times. But hey, I think this year is the first year Mac Brown gets a win over Pitt. But like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if Pitt is a road dog this week and gets it done on the road. I think that this is a time where they could turn their season around. It's make or break right now. But I think in Chapel Hill, Drake May, and that electrifying offense will get it done. But Pitt's defense, I think, will show up knowing this is a must-win game. If they still want to be anywhere even close to the ACC title picture, I think that's out of the picture now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I don't think Pitt's going to win this game just merely because of the offensive performances this entire year. I mean, it's not very creative. Not taking shots deep. I understand that the receivers aren't the best right now. They can't get open, can't create separation. But Keaton Slovis to me, once again, just hasn't been really that guy that I think Pitt and a lot of Pitt fans envision that he could be. But it's just UNC. I think just right now they're just better, and I don't even think UNC is really all that. But I just do think all good things to come to an end. And I think as far as Narduzzi's winning streak against Mac Brown, I do agree with you. I do think that streak ends as well. I think North Carolina's going to win. I think it will be a close game, but I do think Keaton Slovis makes a couple of errors, mistakes. And that's been the theme of all year long, just a couple of mistakes, shooting themselves in the foot. And that's usually why Pitt loses anyway. Like, forget this year, in past years, that's why they lose. They shoot themselves in the foot, and they lose to a team they should not beat. But I think in this case, I think UNC right now is currently constructed, and the way they're playing, I think they're better than Pitt, and I expect them to win.
Yeah, I agree. I think, UNC at home in Chapel Hill, get it done. That leads to our last top 25 game we're going to predict. Stanford and UCLA. Stanford, big win over Notre Dame. That's a big win. 16-14. Could say Notre Dame kind of beat themselves in that one, but at the same time, they went into Notre Dame and they got it done on the road. But now you have UCLA. UCLA, finally stumbled, got their first loss of the year last week. but you still got, a Heisman caliber quarterback on that team. You still have Bobo, who transferred in from Duke. You have Cam Brown, who transferred in from Texas A&M. UCLA, I think, gets this one done at home, especially after that tough loss last week. They're going to be on fire all the way leading into USC.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, UCLA's been a pretty solid team all year long. They've been pretty good. Quarterback play's been good. So, yeah, Stanford, they really haven't been players in really any major bowl, for that matter, for years now. So, I like UCLA. I mean, once again, I think Chip Kelly is starting to build like a legit foundation there. And while I don't think they'll be playoff contenders this year, I think in the future, I think they're set up nicely to be competitive in the Pac-12 conference, if that's still a thing a couple years from now, because obviously a lot of teams are switching conferences and, merging and doing all that jazz. So, in the end, I will take UCLA to win over Stanford.
And I do want to, before we keep moving on, I do want to remind people out there that if you guys want another spot to listen to our podcast, we also stream on Spotify as well, and Apple Podcasts as well. This is the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. Just want a reminder of that, and just a reminder that we're here from Lawrence Hall for Rockathon. But now I do want to talk about Heisman candidates. You think we should talk about Heisman candidates? I'm thinking.
Absolutely.
So I think my top guys are. I'm gonna go through my first one is Michael Penix. 22 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions, already near 3,000 yards, passing this year. And Washington, yes, they've had a couple tough losses, especially against Arizona State, but they're still 6-2. I think Michael Penix just been hands down one of the most efficient, one of the most ball-secured quarterbacks in all of college football. I think he's one of my top candidates to win the Heisman this year.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been alluding to it, but I think Hendon Hooker is in my list. C.J. Stroud for sure is definitely in my list. I would even argue Blake Corum too. I would even argue, who's the other guy? I know this is going to throw you off for a curveball. I'd argue Israel Abanikanda too. I know he's not.
Yeah, for sure.
I know he's not going to be any buzz because he plays at Pitt. I understand that, but he's been one of the best running backs in all of college football. He's been an absolute animal, and he's going to be drafted this year too. His stock is rising. I like him. Another name that you might be surprised at, I'm going to throw Will Anderson from Alabama out there. Will Anderson right now is arguably the best defensive player in all of college football. You could have argued last year. I know Bryce Young is the heart and soul of that offense, but on defense, Will Anderson sets the tone for Alabama. And if he could have been draft eligible last year, he would have been the number 1 overall pick in my opinion. There wouldn't have been a consensus. Oh, who's going number 1? Is it Trayvon Walker? Will Anderson last year would have been the number 1 pick in the draft. And I think this upcoming year, at the very worst, he's not going to last no longer than number 3. I think Will Anderson is that good of a player that, I think he should have warranted Heisman merit last year, but he just didn't get it. And it's just one of those things. Defensive players are not popular as far as winning MVPs and Heisman trophies. I don't know why, because defense is very important to the game of football if you're not a casual out there. But I think Will Anderson's had a very strong year. He's probably not going to win it just because Alabama's defense as a whole hasn't been as great as it has been in past years. But Will Anderson, don't sleep on him. You're going to be hearing his name a lot for the next 10 years in the NFL as well. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I agree with you. I personally think that Aiden Hutchinson had a good chance at winning last year, as crazy as that sounds. But Aiden Hutchinson's proven it this year as well that defenders should be in the conversation. Well, I mean, Aiden Hutchinson is arguably the best rookie defender this year, especially just from don't even look at the stats. Just watch the Lions game. That dude is the centerpiece of their defense. I mean, and I'm speaking too soon. Aaron Donald's obviously, the best defensive player of our generation, in my opinion. But I think Aiden Hutchinson's one of those players where you're gonna have to send a double every single time you play him. Just the lateral quickness and strength, it's just really unmatched. And he proved it last year, and he's proven it again this year.
I will say though, so Aaron Donald, not to go off the deep end, Aaron Donald had one of the best defensive seasons of this past decade, in my opinion.
Yeah.
him and then Dominican Sue with Nebraska, if you remember, was absolutely ridiculous. They were like borderline one-man wrecking crews on defense. So if those guys aren't going to get, throw Aiden Hutchinson in there too if you want to. If those guys aren't going to get serious consideration for the Heisman, then you really have no chance. Like, that's what I'm saying. Aaron Donald, I'm pretty sure, had almost 30 tackles for loss in one season. And I don't think he showed up on any Heisman ballots. So if he's not going to win it, if the Dominican Sue, I don't think he won it either, did he?
He didn't win it.
If he's not going to win it,
the voting, that's 4 times.
That's crazy. If they're not going to win it, I mean, I just unless you're Charles Woodson, like I don't see an avenue for defensive players winning. But I just wanted to throw Will Anderson out there because I do feel like defensive players do not get shown, even in the NFL as well. Defensive players do not get shown the same amount of respect that offensive weapons do, specifically quarterback. That's my opinion.
I agree. Will Anderson's been great all year, and he's arguably been the best Power 5 defensive player in the whole entire league. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Defensive players just don't win the Heisman, and it's probably going to stay like that, especially with the play of C.J. Stroud and Hendon Hooker. I think other than Michael Penix, I think Hendon Hooker has been an amazing quarterback. Obviously defeats Alabama this year, not just him, but like the whole team. But they get that win against Alabama. Hendon Hooker been good all year. Even without, Tillman goes down, Cedric Tillman goes down, but they still get the job done. And yeah, so Hendon Hooker, I think he's one of the favorites to win Heisman right now. C.J. Stroud's obviously up there too, but I always like to do a little asterisk next to anyone next to Ohio State. C.J. Stroud is obviously a very talented quarterback, but he just has so much talent with him. It's really just a whole entire Ohio State team that's just really good. That's just all it is. Like, he has the best supporting cast. So yes, he's talented. Yes, he'll be an NFL quarterback. But I can't. Hendon Hooker and Michael Penix just both don't have the same amount of talent as C.J. Stroud. I know Cedric Tillman's the wide receiver. Like I said, he went down, and Hendon Hooker proved that he could play without him. So, and Israel Abanikanda, he mentioned that there hasn't been a running back in the Power 5 that has been as good as Abanikanda. Okay, so Chase Brown, already over 1,000 yards. I already talked about it a little bit earlier. 4 touchdowns as well. What an amazing year, right? That is great. Over 1,000 yards already. You might have the chance to get 2,000. But Abanikanda, though, breaks Tony Dorsett's single game record, gets 6 touchdowns in a game, gets the 6 Ps. He already has 959 yards and 13 touchdowns. I mean, I know he's at Pitt, but here's the thing. You saw what Pitt Lions been doing this year. It hasn't been as good as it usually has been. And Abanikanda stepped it up for this team. Honestly, without him, they probably don't beat Virginia Tech this year. And without him, how many games do they actually win? He's one of the most important running backs in the league this year. And he's been spearheading this Pitt team the whole entire season. So, why not? Why can't he win? That's the question.
What was your question again?
It's just it was a rhetorical one.
Like, so why can't running backs win either?
Yeah, I was just asking the committee of Heisman, why can't Israel Abanikanda win?
Well, I'll answer for you because he plays at Pitt.
That's exactly why. That's all I wanted. But yeah, so I have it down to Penix, Hooker, Stroud, Abanikanda. Those are the 4 favorites for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say Hooker, Stroud. I'm still going to throw Abanikanda in there. Blake Corum, and I'm going to stick with Will Anderson too. I think Will Anderson will get votes. Obviously, I don't think he's going to win it. But I would even throw Bryce Young out there just because there's, whether or not you guys want to admit it, there is an SEC bias. So I do think somehow, some way, especially with games coming up and, the SEC championship, should Alabama make it that far, I do think some voters will be keen to vote Bryce Young too, so just keep that in mind. I don't think he should win it, but you know how people are with their southern biases. That's all I'll say. Thank you. So with that, we're gonna take a quick timeout. You are listening to the 42nd annual WPPJ Rockathon, benefiting the Early Learning Institute. Stop by our table on the 2nd floor of Lawrence Hall, right outside of Point Cafe, in order to make a donation, buy some merch, or enter one of our 3 raffles. So once again, we're here at Lawrence Hall. This is the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. If you're walking the halls of Lawrence Hall, if you're in West Penn Hall, if you're just on campus, come by, say hello to us. We're pretty friendly guys. We say hi to you. Get some merch, donate, and enter some in these raffles as well. You know, you can win some cool stuff, man. So there's that. This is the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast, and we're back, baby. So tell me, what is our next topic?
You know what? Here's the thing. We've said it. We're friendly people, and you know what else we like to do? We're not only friendly. We like to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think that's a perfect topic is to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers as they go on and take on the Philadelphia Eagles. They're one of the best defenses in the country.
Undefeated as well. The undefeated Philadelphia Eagles.
What do you say we do? Before we'll save the Steelers for last. What do you say we do in an NFL pick'em?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to do a pick'em segment if that's okay with you.
Oh, let's do it. So Tampa Bay at Baltimore, or Baltimore at Tampa, one of the two.
It's Baltimore, Tampa Bay, yeah.
Baltimore, Tampa. Give me your pick on that one.
I like Baltimore. Tampa Bay's been pretty disappointing. Tom Brady, he looks kind of old to me, if you ask. Just not, whether it's his personal life, which is his business, or just the fact that the team has just not been up to snuff as far as performance-wise. Defensively, they're not as good as they have been during their Super Bowl run. And I just think Tom Brady, I do believe he can still play at a pretty high level, but it's becoming quite apparent that he needs the pieces around him to succeed more so than he can carry a team. And I think this year's iteration of the Bucs, I mean, we saw it the last 2 years. They had the talent around them, and they were very good in the past 2 years. But this year, the Buccaneers aren't as good offensively. You lose Rob Gronkowski. You lose Antonio Brown. Like, whether or not you want to admit it, those are big losses. And Leonard Fournette hasn't been as good as he was last year. And offensive line has been in shambles. It's in disarray. They're starting backups. So their O-line isn't good enough to hold up for Brady to make his throws. And that's the thing about Tom Brady. Like, you have to protect him because anytime he senses pressure, it's game over. Like, he'll take a sack. He's not going to be able to make the plays that we're accustomed to seeing Tom Brady make. So I just think the Buccaneers, while they've faced a lot of adversity. Let's put it that way this year. I still think they'll make the playoffs just because their division just isn't very good. I mean, when you look at it, the Falcons are probably arguably the best team outside of everyone else. Like, are you serious? Like, I don't see that lasting very long. The Saints have been, mirrored, just entrenched with injury. Like Jameis Winston, Michael Thomas, they can't stay healthy. And then the Panthers, they just traded Christian McCaffrey. Baker Mayfield's injured right now, so it's pretty much P.J. Walker. So I don't really see them being serious threats, although they did just beat Tampa Bay after all. So
their best win of the year was without Christian McCaffrey.
And they dominated Tampa Bay. So, Tampa Bay to me, I think they'll lose. Baltimore, I think Baltimore's been really good this year. Their record might not indicate it, but their main issue is just closing out games. The most notable game to me that they should have won was the game against the Dolphins. They were up 3 scores, I believe. They just let Tua and Tyreek Hill just tear them apart in the fourth quarter. And Baltimore has a solid team. Obviously, Lamar Jackson got off to a hot start, but I think he's cooled off considerably since. For fantasy purposes, it's not helped my case, but that's not one other story. And, Lamar, I'll take Lamar over Brady at this point. Lamar has the speed. He's going to be hard to contain, especially outside when it starts to run as well. He has his security blanket, who I can make the case is maybe not the best tight end in all of football, but a top 2 tight end. I'd argue he's better than Kittle right now. Give me Mark Andrews over George Kittle right now. Don't at me. But Mark Andrews is a great tight end. He's an elite tight end. And yeah, it's just give me Baltimore. Their running game is good too. Tampa Bay's defense, it's just not there, man. It's really not there. So
yeah,
give me the Ravens.
Tampa's been rough. One word I can describe Tampa Bay's offense is abysmal. And their defense looked really bad last week as well. But I think this week is a week that they can bounce back because the Ravens' defense has been far from good this year. You saw a passing team like the Dolphins against them, scoring 42 points against them. I think this is a week that the Buccaneers finally bounce back. This is probably the most I'm getting on a pick. I just don't know if this is the right pick because, like I said, Tampa Bay, it's been bad on and off the field. I think everyone knows the whole Tom Brady thing right now. He hasn't been good on or off the field. People, like Justin said earlier, people are wondering, hey, is this? He said on the broadcast earlier for one of our classes, maybe he'll retire. You know what I mean? Or maybe he shouldn't have retired, or maybe stay retired. I think he has that competitive edge where they get it done tonight, but I'm not confident about it. I just think that they'll be able to get to the Ravens secondary this week. But the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, honestly, he's proven his worth right now. He's having a solid year this year. Lamar Jackson's one of the best quarterbacks in football. He has the arm, he has the speed, he has what it takes. I agree. Mark Andrews, other than Travis Kelce, I think is the best tight end in the league. George Kittle, huge week last week, so I can't really count him out either. But Mark Andrews has been consistently one of the best tight ends in the league. But I'm saying Tampa, but this is not one of those games you want to make a bet on. Just stay as far away from this game as you can.
Or how about this? Just don't bet at all, because you end up screwing yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't do it at all.
I don't know. I don't know anyone that wins money. I know it's a thing, but personally for me, I've been taking a lot of L's as far as betting goes. So there's that for you guys, though.
Yeah, and you know what? It's okay. It's okay. You live and learn. And I'm just learning from your mistakes there on that one. So yeah. But anyways, it's Broncos and Jaguars that is next for us. That should be a fun game, right? So Jacksonville almost. This is probably going to be one of those games where it's 15-12 or something like that. Jaguars almost beat Giants last week. This week, it's in London. So when you're in London, with the time difference, you never know what you're going to expect out of these teams. I think Russell Wilson's going to come back. He's a winner. He's going to come in. And I think they're going to beat the Jaguars. I think the Jags have a pretty good chance to win this game as well. It's another one of those games where I'm just going out on a limb and saying that Russell Wilson, like Brady, he's got that winning mentality. I think that he goes into this game and they get it done. I think the Broncos have too much skill with Jimmy and all that, and they're going to win this.
Thank you. You're a lot more optimistic than I am. Listen, I'm going to take the Jaguars. Here's why. Russell Wilson, I don't know. I'm sorry. I got something brewing over here. I'm sorry.
Hey, he's from Denver. You got to
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No, but seriously though, Denver, I get they're talented. I do get that, but Russell Wilson to me, he's been just as big of a disappointment as Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers have been all year. Russell Wilson has been Mr. Iron Man these past 10 years, and this year, but for whatever reason, I don't think he's necessarily declined, because I just don't believe that. It's just, whether it's the system, whether it's the head coach, he's just not looked good at all. Not at all. Not accustomed to seeing the Russ that we're used to seeing in Seattle. We said, let it cook, Russ. Let it cook. Let Russ cook. That's the term. And he's been cooking himself in retirement. That's where he's headed next. If he keeps up his play, I'm just saying. They just paid him a whole bunch of money too. This isn't a rental thing. So they're invested in him for the next 5 years minimum. So with that being said, their receiving core to me it's not as good. They lost Javonte Williams, so they're starting. Melvin Gordon's not even getting the same amount of carries as he used to, and they're instead trusting Latavius Murray to make. Are you serious? I just don't think this year is their year to do anything significant in the division. You see, it's tough. Kansas City's been dominant. The Chargers are still pretty decent, and it seems like the Raiders are finally starting to get their act together as a team. So I think Jacksonville right now is better. I know their record isn't as good. I know Jacksonville also started out pretty strong, 2-0. they've kind of sputtered here in recent weeks, but their losses have been very close. It's not like they're getting destroyed. So I think Jacksonville finds a way to win this game. And this is after all the Jaguars Invitational because they play in London every year for Josh Shakes. So just my take, my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, the next one, I think we'll agree on this one. It's Panthers at Falcons. I mean, Panthers, big win last week. This week, I think they're going to have a letdown. Atlanta's better at home, and they've been in every single game they've played this year. So with that being said, I think Marcus Mariota and Kyle Pitts, the offense comes ready to play. They come into this game. Drake London as well. I think they come into this game. They get it done at home. Like I said, Panthers. They're not without Christian McCaffrey. They're just not a great football team. I know they looked great last week. They looked like a Super Bowl contender, but you got to consider who they were playing. And that being said, Falcons at home. Give me them. Cover the 4-point spread.
Yeah, I'd actually tend to agree with you. The Panthers are probably one of the worst teams in all of football right now. The Falcons have been surprisingly competitive. I know last week Joe Burrow absolutely torched them as far as yardage goes, but hey, I mean, they didn't get completely blown out. They did show some fight towards the end of that first half, but ultimately they didn't come away with the W. They're still not a very good team, I don't think, but they might end up winning 7, maybe 8 games. I don't know, that might be a stretch, but 6 or 7 games for the Falcons to me would be somewhat of a success considering their quarterback situation. It's kind of in flux. There's a lot of uncertainty there. I certainly don't think Marcus Mariota is the answer. Well, he's had a solid year. Desmond Ridder, I don't know if he's the answer either. He's like their backup quarterback as of right now. So they might be another team that might be looking at a quarterback next year too. So we'll see how that all plays out in Atlanta. But I do think Carolina does need to look for a quarterback in the draft. That's not really an option. This patchwork that the Panthers have done with Sam Darnold and Cam Newton again and Baker Mayfield, it's just not working. They need to actually go out there and draft a quarterback. And they're just the Panthers are in a very precarious situation. The defense is okay. They have some talent, but it's just not elite. And then the offensive line's a mess. And they just traded McCaffrey as well. And their wide receiving core, outside of DJ Moore's kind of weak too. So, and they also traded Robbie Anderson, not to mention. So, no McCaffrey equals no chance. So, give me the Falcons.
You know what Vince McMahon once said? No chance.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, anyways, that one was specific. I will say this: me saying no chance was specifically for someone sitting to our left. His name is Zach Lowry, and I love him dearly. I'm shouting him out right now. He doesn't want to join the show, but... Okay, he wants to... Okay, he's going to say something.
Oh, say something.
It's a hot mic. What are we talking about? Just tell us about Colorado sports.
Colorado sports? Colorado is the coolest state, because that's where I'm from, which means that they have the coolest sports teams. Did you know who won the Stanley Cup on the last one?
The Colorado Avalanche.
That's correct. Did you know who won the 50th Super Bowl? It's a very cool number. It's a big, you know who won that?
The Denver Broncos.
That's correct.
With Peyton Manning.
Yeah, that's right.
See, he knows sports,
Absolutely.
Yeah, Nathan McKinnon got it done this year.
Yep, I know who that is.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining us, Zach.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
There's a guest appearance. Like we said, we promised more guest appearances, and there was one right there. And he was sitting right next to us pretty much the whole entire time. But anyways, that leads to our next game, and it's Bears at Cowboys. Bears completely blow out the Patriots, 33-14. What a shock, am I right? Well, I won't be shocked if the Cowboys come out here and give them a taste of their own medicine from what they got last week. I think the Cowboys are going to get this one done, but I do think it's going to be a tight game, the one that is anticipated. I think the Bears are actually playing good football. Justin Fields is starting to prove that, hey, I'm here to play in the NFL. He's really looking good on the ground. This team's looking good on the ground. I mean, they're a top 2 rushing offense on the year. I think they're actually number 1. I mean, Khalil Herbert, I know Montgomery's had injury issues, and he's been solid too. And then Justin Fields as well. So that's a three-headed monster right there. I think the Bears are actually not as bad as I thought they were going to be. But I still think Dallas at home are starting to come into their own. And I think they get this one done at home in AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, so I know the consensus is, take the Cowboys to win. But I'm going to go upset special. I'm going to take the Bears to the Cowboys. If you watched last week, Detroit and Dallas, Dak Prescott did not look particularly well. To be honest, I could have sworn that was Cooper Rush out there. No disrespect. Like, he did not separate himself from Cooper Rush as far as performance. I understand he's coming back from injury. Dallas, they're just going to have to continue that formula of playing good defense and running the ball. Like that's how they're going to win games, at least this year. If they start trying to do that air raid stuff like they did last year, I just don't see them going very far with Dak. I mean, I think he's a solid quarterback, but like most quarterbacks in the middle of the pack, like the 15 to 20 range, they have limitations. And Dak Prescott, to me, still, whether the numbers say so or not, he's still not an elite quarterback in my opinion. I think he's a very good quarterback, but not elite. So with that being said, though, I'm going to take the Bears. I like the Bears to build off their momentum against the pretty much crushing of the Patriots, like the first show called as it is. The Bears defensively have been pretty decent, not great, but decent, and offensively too. It's all about the running game. Justin Fields is starting to look like a franchise quarterback that they envisioned when they drafted him last year. And Khalil Herbert, David Montgomery, that's probably one of the better 1-2 combos at running back in the whole league. So when you add all those things together, I think the running game can wear out Dallas' defense. And it's going to be one of those low-scoring 21-20 games, in my opinion. It's just going to come down to who has the ball last. And I do think that the Bears will do just enough to win the game. So give me the Bears to win by like a 3-point game or 21-20. It's going to be very close. I do think that.
I agree it's going to be close. I just think, at home, they'll finally get it done. But that does lead us to the Dolphins and Lions. The Lions haven't scored a touchdown in 2 games. The thing is, their defense has been fine. Like I talked about Aiden Hutchinson earlier. One of the best. He's really changed that defense up. I mean, other than the first week of the season, they've been fine. But they can't score a touchdown. They haven't scored a touchdown in 2 games. And in football, touchdowns are how you win games. Unless you're the Steelers in the 2015 playoffs, you need touchdowns to win games. But
you need Vontez Perfect to win games.
Yeah, or Vontez Perfect. Yep. That could be more like it. But that being said, Dolphins get a. That's how you win against the Steelers. Steelers came in there, gave them a fight. Honestly, I mean, they could have lost that game. But I think that's a game that they needed to win, but they got it done. They'll go into Detroit. I think they'll win this game as well. Detroit, like I said, offense hasn't looked good. Dolphins, Tua's now back. Give me the Dolphins. They're going to try to rebound from this, and they're going to try to get that spot in the playoffs. They need to beat the Lions team, especially knowing that they can't score points. Literally, they haven't scored points in 2 games. It's the Dolphins.
It's funny. The Lions were actually one of the highest scoring offenses the first month of the season, but they have just fallen off the earth completely. That's another team I think is going to be looking at quarterback in the draft this year, too. I think Jared Goff is not the answer. Heck no. And, defensively, you mentioned the Lions. The Lions are not very good defensively. I actually looked this up. They're actually one of the worst defenses in all of football. So, I mean, Aiden Hutchinson, while I do think he will be a stud in the future, the reality is the Lions are still rebuilding. Now, I do think they should probably be a little bit better than where they are now. Just still 1 win. Luckily, there's still some time left for them to finish out strong, but I don't know. As much as I love Dan Campbell as a coach, his attitude, his fearlessness as a leader, as a coach, at some point it needs to start producing results. And I understand the Lions are still rebuilding; like they're not there yet. But if after next year, if they're still not good enough to overcome these games, you have to. That's a bit of a concern. You have to consider whether or not he's the actual coach, because you have to coach too. You can't just be a motivator. You have to have coach. You have to know how to coach too. There's more to coaching than just firing your guys up. So I just want to put that out there. With that being said, I think the Dolphins will finally break out. I think Tua will get more comfortable, and I think Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Water will tear apart the Lions' defense. So give me the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I like MCDC as a coach. I think he's a good coach, but yeah, it's one of those things where they need to start producing because they're starting to get the pieces, but I think they're still a couple years away. And like you said, Hutchinson may have been good, but defense has been far from consistent. So yeah, give me the Dolphins in that one. Cardinals at Vikings is the next game. My money is this is one of those games where the Cardinals now have DeAndre Hopkins back. I mean, they look solid. Kyler Murray looked good that game too. I mean, they scored 42 points. But the one thing is they're going into Minnesota. Arizona, I wouldn't be shocked if they go in and they end up beating, the Minnesota Vikings. But at home, give me Minnesota.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another close game, but like you mentioned, Minnesota's been on a roll this year. They're much better defensively. Offensively, they haven't really popped off yet, but I do expect, as long as you have Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Dalvin Cook, your offense has a chance to actually pop off and do some things. I do think Arizona looked a lot better last week with DeAndre Hopkins. Just goes to show you what kind of player DeAndre Hopkins is. Now you can transform an offense. It looked legitimately better than they have all year long. So, with that being said, I'll take the Vikings. But with that, we have to take a quick timeout for an ad break. Just to remind all you guys, you are listening to the 42nd annual WPPJ Walkathon benefiting the Early Learning Institute. Stop by our table on the second floor of Lawrence Hall, right outside of the Point Cafe, in order to make a donation, buy some WPPJ merchandise, or enter one of our 3 raffles. So, obviously, this is the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. We're coming from you live from Lawrence Hall. If you want to stop by, we'll be here for another 20 minutes, roughly. Say hi, take some selfies. We're not that famous, but if you want to take some selfies, buy some merch, enter in the raffle, make a donation, whatever you want to do. If you just want to stop by and say hi and just go on your merry way, that's cool. But going back to football, what is our next game?
Raiders at Saints. Listen, Raiders, they're one of those teams. They could very easily be 5-1, 4-2. They're 2-4 now. They're going on the road. New Orleans is a tough place to play. Andy Dalton was shredded the other night. Andy Dalton was playing a good game. Threw for over 300 yards. But I think the Raiders' defense is a little bit better than the Cardinals' defense. So that being said, I think the Raiders, Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, they get things on the right track. They win this game. Josh Jacobs, and the Raiders. Yeah, I think they're just a better overall team than the Saints. Like I said, tough place to play in New Orleans, but the Raiders got the squad.
You know what's funny about Josh Jacobs? They declined his 5th-year option, and he's been one of the best running backs in all of football. So, well, I don't think he'll get paid massive. He's going to get paid by some other team. I don't think the Raiders will pay him. But, I mentioned the Saints having injuries on offense, mainly. Give me the Raiders. This is another game where they can get things going, establish a rhythm with Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Devontae Adams. Hopefully Darren Waller gets back into the fray of things, not just for fantasy football purposes, wink wink, but for the fact that he's not been healthy. Once again, his hamstring is killing him again. I guess once you secure the bag, just everything's all good after that. I don't know. But that's besides the point. The Raiders, I like the Raiders to win this game.
Yeah, and that leads to our next game. It's the New England Patriots at the New York Jets. Shockingly, so Breece Hall goes down, so now the Patriots are favored, but they lost to the Bears by 19 points. So that being said, it's almost impossible for me to even think about taking the Patriots in this game. The Jets pick up James Robinson. The Jets still have, Zach Wilson, and you still have Michael Carter as well. Jets win this game at home. They're on fire. They're 5-2. It's a shame Breece Hall got hurt, having a really good year. Great at Iowa State, had some big games, especially against Oklahoma. But he sadly goes down. But I still think the Jets win at home because they're playing the Patriots. The Patriots have been real rough. I mean, they're 3-4, but they're just one of those teams that just does not look good offensively, and especially defensively, giving up 33 points to the Bears. So yeah, give me the Jets.
Jets. Give me the Jets to win. The Patriots had a disastrous performance on Monday against the Bears. Listen, Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, they're like the same exact player. And to me, that's kind of concerning if you're a Patriots fan, because going back watching the game after it was over, the fans chanting for Bailey Zappi's name. I mean, they do realize they have a Mac Jones again? So I think as far as quarterback position and quarterback standings go, the Patriots are in a pretty bad situation in my opinion. Because Mac Jones isn't awful, but he's just an average quarterback. I think Bailey Zappi will be an average quarterback. This whole thing of this is Tom Brady replacing Drew Bledsoe. No, it's not. Tom Brady at least was good as Bailey Zappi. He's just done enough to win. That's the difference. So, when the Patriots made that pick back in 2020 to select Mac Jones, out of that crop of quarterbacks, they took the worst quarterback left. I mean, most people had Mac Jones at best as a second-round pick, maybe a third-round pick, maybe, depending on who you ask, he would be a first-round pick. If someone desperately needed a quarterback, the Patriots at the time, I guess, believed they desperately needed a quarterback. They took him. The Patriots, I don't know, they're just not it this year. They might need to look for a quarterback in the near future again. So it just goes to show you how hard it is to find that franchise guy, honestly. And I'm not really while the Jets have been really good this year, especially defensively, I still think there is pause for concern. I do think this is a very losable game for the Jets. It can be classified, if you want to even call it that, as a trap game. Patriots have had the Jets number over the years. Zach Wilson hasn't necessarily been lighting the league on fire this year. I know they're 5-2, but let's be honest, it hasn't been primarily because of him. It's been because of the defense. So I'm going to cautiously take the Jets to win this game. It's going to be a close game, though.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Now we're at the game. I said we're going to do it last just because we have 15 minutes. I'd rather get this one over with now. Steelers at Eagles. And my money is on Philadelphia Eagles to remain undefeated. Listen, historically, Pittsburgh cannot win at the Eagles. They don't play good in Philly. That's to say the least. And on top of that, I understand that, the Steelers may be good against dual threat quarterbacks, but this team is just loaded. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Zach Ertz, and then on top of that, you have one of the top-ranked defenses in the whole entire sport. So, give me the Eagles. They're not only going to lock down the Steelers' offense this week, I think that they also get it done offensively too. I think they'll win by 12 to 14 points.
I'm going to take the Eagles to win too. Philadelphia is a very hostile environment. Eagles fans can be very raucous, so give me the Eagles win over the Steelers.
Yeah, that leads us to our next game. We have the Titans at Texans. Titans have been playing good football right now, and I think they just keep it up and they go in. Texans, they're not a good football team this year. Still got a couple years to even be close to being an okay football team. Give me the Titans on that one.
Yeah, give me the Titans to win too over the Texans. Texans, once again, are not a very good football team. Titans have gotten their groove together. They've been playing well as of recent memories, so give me the Titans to win.
And then the next one, we got Commanders at Colts. Oh, two teams that have just been really struggling offensively. Commanders, they just had a big win the other day against the Green Bay Packers. I think that they have a letdown, though. I think that the Colts win this game. I know they have Sam Ehlinger as a starting quarterback, but I think they get it done.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Colts to win that game, too. So...
Yeah, then the next one is the 49ers at Rams. LA, they've been solid this year. Both these teams have just been you know what I mean? They're both 3-3 and 3-win teams. But I think this is one of those games where it's up in the air for me. I think with how I want to say Rams at home. I I think that the Rams with the bye week are going to be well rested. I know that they have Christian McCaffrey now, but I think the Rams just have a better defense and they'll be able to keep them in check.
Give me the 49ers to win over the Rams. The Rams have not looked that great to me this year at all, especially defensively and offensively as well. They've been not as good. Their offense is pretty much Cooper Kupp and everyone else. So, yeah, I think the 49ers will bounce back from a tough loss against Kansas City. So, give me the 49ers over the Rams. It'll be a close game, though.
Yeah, and then our next game is the Giants at Seahawks. Seahawks have been red hot. Giants, they've been good. They've been consistently in each game. But I think that this time around, they finally get handed a defeat. I think the Seahawks have a big win over the Giants. They've looked good. I mean, you got Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I know Geno Smith may have cooled off a little bit. Still a solid quarterback, though, in my eye, especially for this year. He's one of those guys. I think he's definitely a Pro Bowler. I think the Seahawks in the 12th man, I think they get it done at home against the Giants.
So I think this is also going to be another close game, though. But, I'm going to go with the Seahawks. Like you said, the 12th man, I think does play a big part in it. The Giants, to me, they've kind of been just getting by a lot of these games that they've won. Defensively, they've been pretty good, though. But their offense is pretty much Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones occasionally making a throw here and there. So, yeah, I think this is where the Giants' magic starts to end. And I'm going to take the Seahawks to win.
Yeah, and that leads us to the Packers at Bills. I think the Bills win this one convincingly. They've been good all year. And, my money's on the Bills just continue their dominance. They already had their skin against the Dolphins. Yeah, they get this one done.
So, the Packers and Bills, give me the Bills to win. The Packers have not been playing good football as of recent memory, and Aaron Rodgers, to me, just hasn't looked that great this year. The wide receivers, still trying to get rapport, get chemistry as well. So, they're in Buffalo. It's going to be a hostile environment. It's Sunday Night Football. So, give me the Bills to win. They're on a roll. They're just coming off a bye week. They just beat the Chiefs as well. So, just give me Buffalo to win. I think they're going to win pretty convincingly by at least 2 scores. So.
Yeah, and lastly, we got the Bengals at the Browns for Monday Night Football. And this one's a tough one to pick, but I think that the Bengals looked really good last week. I think they look good again. They were finally showing that they could score and their offense is rolling. Jamar Chase is out. Jamar Chase will not be playing this game, but I think they still have the offense to do it and still win this game. My money is on the Cincinnati Bengals to get the road win against the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bengals to win. The Browns really, to me, haven't been playing well. I think the Bengals, they're kind of starting to find their footing and their rhythm, especially with Joe Burrow. He's played well as of recent the past couple of weeks. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, what can you say? I still do think they need to get the running game going, though, as far as their offense goes. Their defense has been pretty good as well, not allowing touchdowns in the second halves of games the past few weeks. So as long as they continue that, I think they can against Cleveland. Their offense is pretty limited outside of Nick Chubb. So, the Browns' offense, it's just not where it needs to be right now. I mean, you have Amari Cooper. I think David Njoku, for the most part, has been pretty solid. But Jacoby Brissett, it's what's really holding this team back. I think once they get Deshaun Watson back, not this year, but next year, I think they'll start to see the Browns start to make some noise. So,
I couldn't agree with you more. And that does it.
Pretty much, that's all we have.
Anyway, this was the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast coming to you live from Rockathon at WPPJ.
Yes, you were listening to the 42nd annual WPPJ Rockathon, benefiting the Early Learning Institute. Stop by our table on the second floor of Lawrence Hall, right outside the Point Cafe. In order to make a donation, buy some PPJ merch, or enter one of the 3 raffles. But it was great doing the show, Tony.
too, Justin, and thank you all for listening to us. Thank you for sticking through it all. Thank you for supporting this cause. We all appreciate it here at Boyd Park University, and thank you again.
Absolutely. And just one more time before we sign off, if you want to find our show, we usually record it at the CMY at Point Park. We also sometimes post on YouTube our video clips. So if you want to find our show, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast at, search the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast. I actually have a lot of this episode recorded, so I'm going to try my best to edit it down. We'll actually post a live version on our platform. So for Antonio Rossetti, I'm Justin Stewart. This has been another edition of the Rossetti and Stewart Podcast, live from Lawrence Hall. Once again, signing off. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.